Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and we are at Distributech 2025. We've got interviews with thought leaders, and we'd love for you to see what we've done here. Hey, thanks for joining us. My next guest is Mike Adams. Mike, thank you for joining us. Mike is the CEO of Osmose. Is that right?
That's right.
A friend of mine worked at MCOR. He's been with them, I think, his entire career. Osmose acquired his company. And at the beginning, he was a little skeptical as what role would I play? What would I do? And now he's like he's a kid in a candy store enjoying what he does. So thank you for what you've done for Ben, who's one of our executive editors. But that speaks volumes about someone who's come in from one culture, come into another culture. And that's obviously a lot about Osmose. But before we go to Osmose, tell me how did you get in this industry? And why did you get in this industry?
Sure. Well, I don't know if you can hear it from my accent anymore, but I'm Irish, originally from Ireland.
I was born in Scotland, so we have that in Sherry, yeah.
All right, pretty close. Celtic cousins.
And both of my grandfathers were Irish, who were brought over to Wales and Scotland to mine coal.
Okay.
All
right. So how did I get in this industry? I started my career with GE back in 1989 as a gas turbine field service engineer. So I'm a power generation guy who did that for 31 years. Most of my career with GE. I also worked for Alstom Power in there, and then came back to GE when GE bought Alstom in 2015, and retired from GE in 2020. And I've been with Osmose now 3 years. So I'm mostly a power generation guy. I would consider I've been in this industry for my whole career, but I'm still honestly learning the T&D space a little bit, and I've been 3 years in here now, and pretty cool. I mean, it feels like the investment is now swinging more towards the grid and away from power generation a little bit, where I think historically power generation got a lot of the money, and the grid was probably a little underserved, a little underinvested, and probably, is a little behind where it needs to be in terms of its overall health as a result. So I'm pretty excited to play a role in that now.
It's interesting that power gen then, when you first got into it, versus power gen now. Power gen is all of the grid edge now. It's wind and solar. There's not a lot of big power generation. Hydro's kind of flattened, especially in this country. We don't have many coal plants left. So if it's not gas or wind or solar, it's just not happening as much anymore. So you still are in power gen. You're just at the distribution.
Well, I wouldn't leave out nuclear, by the way. I feel like I think you forget nuclear is carbon free also. So I'm a proponent of nuclear. I know it takes a while to build a nuclear power plant, but
these new modulars.
Yes,
yeah,
totally agree.
I live in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a new nuclear plant that came on. Right.
That's right.
And it's already sold out.
That's right.
I mean, Southern Company and Southern Nuclear that built that plant. And we all complained about it when it was over, cost overrun, et cetera, et cetera. Now we are so glad they did it, because the data center growth in North Atlanta, which is only second to Northern Virginia, could not happen without that new plant vote.
I agree. I think that plant's going to be a great legacy for the state of Georgia. Congrats to Southern Company.
Congrats to Tim Eccles, who fought for it as a public service commissioner and took a lot of heat for the fact that he fought for it. Let's talk about change. This industry has done, and you've seen it from the power gen side, and you just said it. Hey, now it's not so much there. It's now at the T&D side, really heavily at the D side. Much is changing in distribution. Talk about what you've seen as some of the changes that have been taking place in the last 5 to 10 years, say.
I mean, if you don't mind, I'll go back even further than that. You go this far back, just talk about services in general, because I feel like I have a very interesting perspective on services. When I started my career in 1989, working for GE, actually it wasn't even a service business. It was, we did warranty work. Then we built a transactional services business. Then we moved to a contractual services business. And then we moved into sort of driving productivity. And then at the end, when I retired from GE, it was sort of outcome-based services. And what I've learned is like customers don't want the service. They want the outcome for this. Absolutely. So they would really prefer that you do no work and you just tell them the equipment is okay and you don't have to take any outage. So, the answer to that is data. Back in my gas turbine days, we used to, we'd take a machine apart and we would figure out that 30% of the machine was fine. Usually we just didn't know that before we disassemble it. So if we could have figured that out from the data, we could have done much more efficient service and we could have done much more targeted service. So, I think that's the evolution that I see is data and AI and analytics, I think, can supplement the wrench turning that needs to go on, whether it's in power gen or in the T&D side. I think that's honestly the big evolution that's exciting for me. And that's the reason I'm frankly still active and still working and still passionate about what I do.
How does part of the problem, we've got two things going on at the same time. You've got that transition to data. I love what you said about they would really like you to tell them nothing's wrong, keep on running, right? In the maintenance and reliability world, which is where I come from, we used to be doing time-based maintenance. We broke more things than were not broken by taking them apart. Yeah, especially breakers.
Yeah.
The electrical side, especially breakers. You break breakers when you test them, right?
Yeah.
And so consequently, we do get to a point is, hey, let's just do condition-based, which means a lot of little sensors everywhere. You even see it here, taking in a lot of data, sending it somewhere. And that's kind of where we are today is you hear that from utilities. I don't just need more data. I need the decisions that come from all of that data. And I need interoperability, which is, we're not getting that if we have this machine, that machine, and people are trying to sell their proprietary product, right? Talk a little bit about that part of it from a leader's perspective. You've got the same thing. You got to look at it and say, hey, I'm getting all this data to make decisions about the business. Where's it coming from? Who's analyzing it? And just tell me the answer. Don't tell me the data.
Yeah, that's it. I think you answered your own question. It's when I said outcome-based service, that's what I meant. It is what people want is the insights from the data. I think every industry, not just the utility industry, suffers from maybe having too much data and having data that's poorly sorted or poorly organized. And how do you get the outcome that tells you what you need to do? I think that's what we're all searching for. We've just announced today, actually, that we're going to partner with a company called NERA, which is an Australian company that's developed this digital twin asset management health system where, they can start to take our data and make it more intelligible by utilities. And, it's an area to explore. I don't know that we would say we have all the answers, but I do believe the answer is in there somewhere, is that, we sorting data, making data, more actionable. I think that's the goal. And if we could ever, even in our job, which is inspecting wood poles mostly, although we do more than that now, if you could figure out which pole was likely to need work because of maybe wind conditions or soil conditions or rain, or maybe could you even detect by having something on the pole that a woodpecker had pecked the pole, for example. Like if you could ever do that, then we could probably skip 10 poles and do one pole, and then we could provide much more affordable service in terms of what the consumer pays for electricity down the road. So and buy down the risk for the utility in a more efficient manner. Now, I don't want to pretend we're doing that, but I think that's the direction we're sort of leaning towards, rather than rolling a truck, 100,000 times a year, when maybe 30% of the time, just like my gas turbine analogy, that truck roll maybe wasn't needed because the equipment was in good shape. Now, a wood pole is a pretty benign standard piece of equipment. It's hard to imagine you might have a sensor on it, but could sensor technology get so evolved and so affordable one day to where we could do that? Yeah, I think likely yes.
I think I know a company that's already
get there.
I do know a company that's trying to get a partner to get there. It's not for wood poles, but it's the idea of, can we make a sensor that is effective in any environment at a cost that would allow it to go on to anywhere and, give data back. I'll introduce you to them here, a partner of ours here. I think you answered the next question about what is it going to look like in the future, partly, and what it's going to look like is outcome based, right? People just they don't tell me how you're going to do it, just tell me that you're going to do it. That begs another question. The level of this industry is one, the utility industry is one that is very me too. So if somebody comes up with a solution, they're willing to follow. And it's been, to a large extent, large companies. So Hitachi, GE, no one ever got fired from buying from Siemens, those kinds of mentalities in it. And that has really stymied a lot of good innovation. A lot of little companies coming and doing great innovative things don't ever get to market because trust. I don't trust that your outcome is going to be the outcome I need. I don't want it. And show me something that's proven and new technology. Well, you get proven or you get new technology. Talk about this idea of outcomes and what does it mean for the future of this industry?
I guess I would agree with what you said. I think everybody wants to be first to go second, right? Oh, with technology and know that it's a good bet. I don't know that drives true innovation. I think sometimes you got to be doing things that are failing and trying new things. And, smaller companies probably struggle to do that because they don't have the same investment power of the bigger companies. But smaller companies are also maybe more nimble. Having worked for a big company most of my career, I can sort of attest that smaller companies maybe are more nimble. So, I really do believe that data can guide you to more efficient service, and I think that can apply to almost anything, And so, when it comes to what we do, we have a lot of data. We visited. There's 160 million wood poles in the United States. We believe we visited 90 million of them across our history. We visit, about 8 million a year. So, we collect a lot of data. We usually collect 18 to 20 data points every time we visit a pole. So, that's a lot of data. Now, we're trying to get better at using that data to our advantage. But I would say we're at the early phases of that. So we do some of it in-house, but we're also working with third parties to sort of enable us to be more efficient. And sometimes a company like ours doesn't have all the answers. So it's better if you go to a smaller, more nimble technology company who's maybe more on the cutting edge of the type of technology that would be available. So we're very open to that.
Because Osmose is well known for what you do in the industry, there is a level of trust. So if you can somehow take somebody else's solution and bring that with the credibility that you bring for it. Tell me a little bit about Osmose. As the leader, where's it going? What do you see for the future?
Well, we're known mostly as a wood pole inspection company. We would say that we're a services company, but we're a services company with a view to life extension. So, our value proposition to our customers is to help you get the maximum life out of your assets. So we would say if you take care of a wood pole the right way, it can last 100 years. And if you do nothing, it reaches end of life probably around 40 years through wood decay. So, the right thing is, say when a wood pole is 10 years old, it might look new, but by now the preservative has probably deteriorated at the ground line and you're probably seeing a little bit of decay. You should go and you should arrest that and you should reapply the preservative. And if you do that, you probably get 40, 50 years of doing that and everything is good. At about the 50-year mark, no matter what, you'll have a little bit more decay. You might have a little bit of reduced strength. We can put a metal truss next to the pole and then you get an extra 40 years of life plus. So that's the 100-year mark if you do the right thing. That's most of our business, but we have 3 other lines of business. We do the same thing on steel transmission towers and steel poles. And as a recovering mechanical engineer, I'm always amazed that people think that steel lasts forever, and it really doesn't. Steel corrodes just like wood decay. So you have the same issue. You have the same dynamic with steel transmission towers and steel poles. And same thing, you're probably more like the 50-year mark. You should be doing something. Very often when we go out to inspect steel transmission towers, we'll find that the steel is corroded, or maybe the tower was built 20 feet from a riverbank and now it's like 5 feet from a riverbank, or maybe it's hanging over the riverbank, or maybe a farmer has backed the tractor into the tower and nobody knows. Sometimes we find towers, believe it or not, standing on 3 legs. So don't need a new tower at that stage. You can restore it, you can replace it. We have solutions like we'll do ground lidar, we'll do a digital twin of the tower, and we'll redesign the structural integrity of the tower. We'll put light back on the tower, and we can life extend a line of towers. Usually at like 20% of the cost of a line of towers. So we have the same value proposition on transmission business, mostly transmission towers, which are steel typically, although there is some wood in the transmission dimension as well. Third line of business is in the underground segment. I think the grid is going to go more underground. So you mentioned the MCorp acquisition we did last year. That is again aimed at life extension. We do a very high quality, we would say a factory grade test on an underground cable using a proprietary PDA analysis. As a result of that, we can predict the remaining life of your installation. We're always on the structural integrity of the grid. We're not so much in the electrical side. So the poles that hold the grid up, the towers that hold the transmission grid up, and the insulation that keeps the underground grid, structurally, strong. So same thing there. We will predict the remaining life on the cable, and we have some solutions for quick repairs when you find issues. And our fourth line of business is we call it technical services, which is more of an engineering backroom team with a field team that looks at things like pole loading, distribution engineering, infrared inspection. So we for both the telecom industry and the electric utility industry, we drive lines that we tell customers how loaded their system is or what issues they might have. And last year we did another acquisition of a distribution engineering company because right now we believe the broadband build out is fueling our technical services business. In the future, we believe the grid will need to be redesigned as we move more towards electrification. And, we believe the utilities will need help with that as, in all likelihood in the future, we'll be driving more electric vehicles. Our home heating will be more electric, less gas. And the grid up and down the streets of our country is going to look a little bit different. And we need to carry maybe 2 to 3 times more electricity. So we want to be there for our customers to help them when they have to kind of lean into that. So look, we're always looking for a way to be relevant to the industry and I do think we have a trusted name and as you said, but to keep that, you got to be relevant. You also got to keep executing and do your work well. So, that's sort of my job is to pick the right strategy and keep the company running well.
Good. Resilience, because we're seeing weather events that we've not seen before. So when you see something like a hurricane that comes up through Georgia and North Carolina and devastates Asheville, or Puerto Rico, which has hurricane, forest fire, hurricane, does Osmose get involved with, I'm going to say remediation, but you got to go in and assess these places. I once went to Houston and massive amounts of water and these gigantic steel towers and all of the wood poles are underwater. Somebody's got to say, hey, this is what happened in the ground. This is what happened. Do you all do that too?
We participate in the assessment piece. Okay. Don't do the restoration. We're a services company. We're not a construction company. We would say that's more construction. But what we do is we have an offering on the predictive piece. So we would say, with the data that we have from the wood pole inspections or steel tower inspections that we have done before, we have proprietary software where we can simulate what the impact at the ground line would be for a 120 mile an hour wind. We can give you a prescription by prescription. Here's what we should do with each pole. This pole needs to be replaced. This one can be trussed. This one is fine. Right. And we have done resiliency studies with quite a few investor-owned utilities, not just on the coast, by the way. Sometimes it's straight line winds inside of the country, or sometimes it's ice loading on lines that can be significant enough with a straight line wind. So we do have digital models more on the proactive side. So, I think a good services company is always trying to provide value to customers so they can prevent the catalyzing events. So that's, I would say, where our focus is mostly. When these events hit, it's very unfortunate. We then redirect our workforce to help with the assessment of what's happened, but we're not so much involved in the restoration side.
But it's, to what you said earlier, they want to know what the outcome is. they don't want you to do it. They want to know what they should do with that. So what's the outcome after this?
You want to prevent the bad event by doing the maintenance up front. And, we would say there are a lot of things you can do at a relatively affordable cost. Does it always need new construction? Yeah, there's some, but there's probably a place for new construction, life extension. And honestly, a lot of the time the assets are just fine as is. And it's good to have the assurance that is the case. So, so when a hurricane blows through, you maybe have less than 100 poles that have blown down versus a few thousands. You've done nothing. So, we're always trying to be on the proactive end with customers, being a bit more prognostic and predictive,
Mike, thank you so much. It's your pleasure.
My pleasure.
I've learned some things in this.